For much more on Nick Taylor, now joining us is world-renowned coach Gareth Raflewski, who of course works with Nick Taylor. Gareth, welcome to Golf Talk Canada.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, my friend. So, I've loved asking people what their perspective was from Nick Taylor winning the WM Phoenix Open. For you, his putting coach, what was it like for you watching your guy get it done?
It was amazing. You're sitting there going, okay, could get this birdie here, maybe birdie there. 17, yes, there's a chance there, and then when that slipped away, you're like, oh boy, let's hope he gets a look at it on 18, because we knew he was putting well, but it's been exciting. It was exciting all week. I was there in Phoenix with him. I had flown home by then. And he was putting well all week. Obviously got off to that great start, the 60 to start the round, or start the campaign, and just he was seeing the line well, and things were easy, and that's nice. Well, easy for the first round, and then the second and third round were kind of like not really taking advantage of it, where you were hoping, and then pulled it together in the last round. So it's certainly a lot of fun watching someone perform their best.
Now, when you're working with a pro, whether it's Taylor or someone else, can you see performances like this coming? Like, did you think his game was trending in the right direction?
Yeah, we've seen that for a while. Everything is a lag. You get to the point where you're like, everything looks good, everything's performing well, but we're not really seeing it in tournaments yet, so there's always a bit of a lag there. And we knew he's well capable. His wedge game is phenomenal, his short game is excellent, and his putting is really, really come on. Like his putting, I think at one stage he was 181st in three putt avoidance. And now I think he's around about 10th or 7th or something, So like in a couple of years, he's really made dramatic strides in improving his speed control. Obviously that's big for avoiding three putts, So um, slowly but surely we're like you're seeing, 180 to 10th or 7th or whatever, but like we've been seeing like 180, like 160, 140, so we know it was coming along. Um, and then everything's kind of come together. The strokes got tighter, the mechanics got tighter, the routines got tighter, and then it's just a lot of repetition. I think people don't understand, especially if you're making changes. When you make a change, the most important thing you need to do after making the change is to continue to do the same thing for an extended period of time after making the change. Where most people, when they've made the change and they see the instant result happening once or twice, they're like, okay, what's next? And they move on, So I think that's what Nick's done really well.
So you mentioned these changes that Nick has made. Let's go back a little bit. When did you guys initially start working together?
So we started in Torrey 2 years ago. And he just said, "Hey, can you help me? My bunker play is just not great, or my chipping's just not 100% where I would like it, Started working with him on his chipping and his bunker play, and then he's like, "Hey, can you help me with my putting a little bit, And at that stage, he was probably about 100 and around the 140th in putting. Um, so he's obviously a very good putter, but he's extremely streaky. So he would putt great, and then he would go to a tournament and he would lose 2.5 strokes in a round, and then the next day he would lose 1.5 strokes. So we tried to figure out how could we make those changes a little bit less dramatic, from making like two positive strokes to two negative, like that swing is just way too much, So he had a lot of face rotation in his stroke, so we had to quiet that down. His tempo was a little bit off, his strike location was a little bit off, so he's got great hands, so obviously most of the time he can make it, but that odd time sort of slipped away. So once we made the changes, then we could start to see some of the consistency. And my goal was making him get positive 0.25 strokes gain per round. That was my goal. If we could get that there, stabilize the bleeding on the bad days, then I felt that he could contend.
And he's done that and then some. And so for those watching Nick Taylor, they noticed the grip, the claw. How did that become a thing?
So Nick always had a little bit of side tilt with his head. So his head would always sit like this here and it'd always sit way behind. So his perception of the line would change so much. So we were trying and playing around with one day and he says, what about if I just did this here? How does that look? Or what was that? And I'm like, you're always reluctant to change someone's grip, but you're like, okay, the setup looks a lot better. I'm like, let's try it. So we tried around, we tinkered, numbers looked good. He did it for 2 rounds, and then he's like, no, no, this isn't gonna work. And he went back to his old putting for I think the next 2 rounds and then the next tournament. And then after that, he's like, you know what? I'm going back to claw. Like I think it's better for my. I'm like, yeah, I'm 100% on board. I think it's great. So he did try it and ultimately changed and went back to the old one, but then he said, no, I'm committed to it. He committed to it. And the big thing is it got his body in the right position instead of having a lot of like side and tilt and bend. And the claw was not because his hands were doing anything too crazy. It was more because his body was in a better position with the claw grip than anything else. So most people think it's because his hands were just getting a little shaky or doing something a little bit that they didn't want to happen. Yeah.
That's fascinating. I've never heard that before. And I know many people watching this, listening to this, they're probably going to take their putter out of their garage and maybe give the claw a little workout, per se. Now,
Hmm.
we've seen Nick Taylor be so clutch. Obviously, last year's RBC Canadian Open, this past weekend at the WM Phoenix Open. Where do you think that clutch gene comes from for Nick Taylor on the greens?
I think it comes from like if you look at his pedigree going back through his junior days, like he was a world number one amateur. He was a killer, as they always said. So he was a guy that was able to get it done whenever it didn't look like he could get it done. So, we always joke with him is that, our job as coaches is not to teach him that part. Our job is to get him into the position and then his instincts take over and he knows exactly what to do because how could you possibly teach that there to someone? That's just, it's built into you, it's you either love the big moment or you hate it, and you can certainly try to develop a sense for it, but some people are just built for that, so, our running joke is that we just get him in the hunt and then we just go, all right, this is all you buds, because he knows exactly what to do, and the routines and everything that we've put in place allow him to free up his body just to do what he needs to do. And I think he had a great quote in his interview after it. He said, I just get up there, I do my routine, and I get out of my way and I hit the putt. And it sounds so cliche, and we all think we want to do that, but we know we'd all be steering and just please go in. But he's able to combat those thoughts and just go through his routine and just execute what he needs to do. But I think it's probably a lot to do with his upbringing that, that's built, that's deep in there somewhere.
We're in conversation with Gareth Raflewski, who's coaching Nick Taylor and a number of other pros too. And you mentioned that a number of times there, routine. What is Nick Taylor's routine and how important really is it for him to have all the success that he's had?
The routine's huge, like your body needs it craves a comfort level, right? So it needs to be in a position where it can actually settle down. Your breathing comes down, your heart rate comes down. So if you don't have a routine that is common to you, then it's very hard. So if you go and you start doing new things in the middle of your putting routine, whatever you want to call it, you're doing new things. So your body's not going to have an opportunity to settle down into itself. So the routine is basically giving you the opportunity to be ready to hit the putt the way you need to hit it. Now, it might change from second to second, from here to there, but a lot of times it's just making sure that you're doing the same thing. It's very repetitive and it's extremely boring. Like even like I told Nick a while ago, I said, we're going to do the same stuff over and over and over and over again. But I told him the science behind why we're doing it. We're doing it because in the moment, your body will just relax because it's doing the same thing. It's the same thing if we go for a warm up to play a tournament. If you're going into the practice ground or you're warming up and you're trying to think about what to practice before you're teeing off, you've got it all wrong. All of that should be all organized, all planned out. So when you show up, you do this, you do this, you do this, you go to the tee. Everything we try to do is very systematic so that that gives your body a level of comfort, and that routine is exactly the same thing.
That is fascinating. I've never thought of routine like that, but definitely we'll take that of so much importance going forward. Now, I mentioned earlier the RBC Canadian Open, that iconic moment last June, and I've loved asking people their perspective, where they were when that putt happened. So for you, Gareth, where were you?
I was at home with my family, all watching it. So I was at the tournament all week. I left on Saturday. Um, And yeah, he'd been playing well. I was at home watching. You're just thinking, don't three putt from that distance. Let's get it cozy it up there nicely, and then it goes in, and then everybody goes completely mad, and we're all jumping around the living room too, doing exactly the same thing. Excited for him and for what it means for Canadian golf too.
Yeah, it was a remarkable moment. I'm just getting chills thinking about that right now, just thinking that actually happened last June. That was incredible. So we've spoken at length about your work with Nick Taylor. Give us a sense of some of the other pros that you're working with, both PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, anywhere.
Yeah, so I've been doing a lot of work on the LPGA tour probably for the last, well, probably 8, 9 years.
Hmm.
So I've Ronnie Yin, who's from China. She's world number two.
Hmm.
I have Jin Young Ko.
Yep.
I have I have about 10 players on the LPGA tour that I've been lucky enough to help. And it's been super fun. I think that's where I sort of cut my teeth. I've had an opportunity to coach about 85, yeah, about 85 plus LPGA tour players. So I've had a lot of experience and a lot of experience players winning majors, winning big tournaments. So I think that's been nice now to be able to transition a little bit over onto the men's side where I've had that experience. I know what it looks like to help build someone's game into something that's good, but also I always think about it like, will this hold up on Sunday? Like
Hmm.
if we make this change, like I don't like cosmetic. If we make this change, does it work on Sunday? If it doesn't work on Sunday, I have no interest in it, you know, even if it's just a temporary thing. So I'm always thinking about that. And it's nice because I've been able to sort of prove it a little bit with the women's game. We've had, I think, about 27 wins with the ladies. Um, so it's been pretty fun to do that, and then two with Nick now. So that's my second PGA win, which is super super fun.
Super, super fun and a ton of great accomplishments. And for you, you're in London, Ontario. You're at Riverbend. What are you doing there at Riverbend, helping some amateurs out?
So my members here at the club, so I have a great membership. It's an interesting one. It's a gated community, like similar to Florida. You have to be 50 years young to get in. So we have a lot of older members, and it's just so funny. One of my members, he comes up to me, he always jokes and tells the story. He goes, I watch him hit like three balls, and I said, why don't we go to the short game? Maybe we'll find it over there. So like as you get a little older, you're just not going to pick up the speed that you want. So it's kind of fun for me. And my members are super active taking lessons. They love coaching. All of the pros here teach, at the club. And it's just a great environment. And then I often have a lot of great juniors and pros and everybody stopping by into the club. And we have a great golf course, phenomenal greens, which when you're teaching putting a lot, that does help, right?
Yeah, it certainly does help in a big way. Okay, before we let you go, for anyone watching, for anyone listening who wants to improve their putting, whether they're a 20 handicap, a weekend warrior, or trying to get down to a scratch, what's the number one thing you see that amateurs need to improve the most?
Most of it is the perception over the ball. So they'll line it up, they'll put the line down, but as they step over the ball, everybody will reminisce with this here when I say, you step over the ball, you put your putter head down, and it doesn't look right, right? It looks off. So then there's a series of compensations and manipulations that has to happen. So I would say that for most people, they need to train their eyes over the ball a lot of good vision work when they're over the ball. So when they step over it, they line the putter down, it's right edge, and they look up and it goes, yeah, it looks right edge. Like if you get to that point, you are so far ahead of everybody else.
Hmm. Wow, that is so interesting. And I know those watching, those listening, most of those people are Canadian and listening to this in Canada. It's snowy outside, but they can't wait to maybe get the putter out in their living room and start grinding for golf season. Gareth, congratulations on all the success you've had, not only with Nick Taylor, but the LPGA players too. Thanks for your time today.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.